our buddy Matt George. Hard at work. Matt George, Locked On Kings podcast, ABC 10. Matt, what's up, buddy?
Hey, I have a distinct memory of the national TV game that you're talking about, the Kings Nets. I remember specifically, D'Lo, I can tell by your face. Did you guys talk about this already? I distinctly remember a certain autograph session happening pre-game.
Yeah, it happened. Look, just like Willie Mays or Mickey Mantle or something, they were hanging their shirts down the thing like, please, can you sign it, please? Here's the pen. Throwing him the pen. He throw the pen back up. All this other stuff, like a true superstar.
Yeah, well, here's the problem you're missing, Kenny, is they were looking at Damian and they're going, KC, can you sign this, KC?
That's true.
It's actually, where were we? Oh, yo, did Nikki D ever tell you the story before we went to I think it was Bryson Tiller?
No, she never told me. No.
We were going to kill time because the line was super long. Matt will appreciate
that
this.
Was crazy.
We went to like Dive Bar or District, one of those spots. It was just a bar. It was open. We were going to grab a drink, wait for everybody. So we went and I heard it, like I heard noise behind me. I didn't think anything of it. And then it started to become like clear. KC. This and I turn around and Nikki goes, "That's D'Lo." This is a true story. You could ask Nikki. She goes, "Oh no, that's what I meant, D'Lo. I love the show. I listen every day. Sorry, man. I'm a little bit drunk, but I really love you guys. Can I get a picture?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." I just thought it was funny.
It was like
thought I was KC.
It was like 4:30 in the afternoon talking about I was.
Oh no, he was on one. Yeah, he was on one for sure. And by the way, Matt, that moment you're speaking of would have gone unnoticed if it wasn't for a particular photographer who felt the need to be a smartass.
Hey, it wasn't being a smartass. It was capturing a moment. Damian Barling signing autographs in the tunnel. I mean, you can say that you signed autographs in the same place that Damian Barling, that De'Aaron Fox, that Domantas Sabonis. I mean, you're amongst elite company there. People asking for your autograph.
Or they can say they've signed autographs the same place Damian Barling has.
Are you guys done or no? Do you want to keep this going?
I distinctly remember that was also the game. I think it was the game that Kenny was sitting in that little cutout area that's basically reserved for like player families. It's like that area right above the
I was in the seats. I don't know. No, that wasn't that game. I was in the seats. I was with the people.
That wasn't that game.
Right.
There's a cutout area right above where all the scores tables are, where there's a little section. They should just put couches there. It's like a little living room that you can sit courtside.
Didn't they used to put couches there? Or no, that's at the 49ers game.
That's 49ers, yeah.
That was the one game Kenny wasn't there. And the only reason he wasn't in that particular spot is because he brought the kids with him and a very pregnant wife. So he had to sit with, the regular people. It was tough for him that day.
I was with the people. I'm always with the people.
Yeah, the people can't get to you, though. They can't get to you way down there.
Even in the playoffs, I was with the people, man. I was like, I need to be with the people.
And people who sit real close.
No, well, I mean.
With Drake, you and Trista Craig. I saw you.
Drake took a step back for us.
No, I believe that. Matt, I feel like we got to thank Matt George, too, for all he's done for D'Lo and KC over the last 3 years. Matt allowed himself to be blackballed by the station down the street for appearing on the show 2 days after he joined ABC, and he's obviously been a massive part of our Kings coverage over the last handful of years and a massive part of this show's growth, Matt. So we appreciate you, my man.
I appreciate you guys too. And you don't know how topical what you just said is, because I was having conversations with somebody from over there just recently about that.
Be careful.
Yeah, be careful.
Be careful, brother.
Be careful. They don't like you talking. They don't like us fraternizing together.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm happy to be here. It's been a joy. I've had more fun on this radio show than any radio show that I've ever had. This show has shown me love, and this show has supported me for being me and who I am. And that's a big difference. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be at ABC 10 for another, hopefully, great season. And let's do it, man. I'm excited. Although I love schedule release day, except when I see the date at the top of the schedule, I'm like, oh, this is great. It's still 2 freaking months away from now. So I'm a little bummed out about that part, but at least
let's dive right into it then. I'm sure we got a podcast coming on this soon. What do you think of the schedule, particularly the 22, if you count NBA TV, nationally televised games?
The podcast has already dropped, so you guys can catch it right after D'Lo and KC is off the air. But I mean, the national TV love is excellent. It's excellent. It's what the Sacramento Kings deserve. I do wish it was a little more variety of competition. I think 3 of the 4 Warriors games are on national TV, 2 of the Lakers games on national TV, 2 of the Clippers games on national TV. Doesn't surprise me because the Kings play in the best division in basketball, and it's not even close. The Pacific Division. Not that divisions matter that much, except for how many times you play an opponent. But it doesn't surprise me that the Kings have that many national TV games against those teams. But I mean, no Eastern Conference opponents on national TV. And I'm a little disappointed by that. Although national TV isn't for me. National TV isn't for us. National TV games aren't for Sacramento Kings fans. We're already watching no matter what, and we're watching wherever we can. National TV games are for the rest of the NBA viewing audience. So it makes sense why they're showing big games and big Pacific Division games that should matter. But I would have liked to see a little more variety, but now I'm just getting picky.
Yeah, I hear you on that one, though. I mean, the big time East Coast teams coming through. Maybe you want to see that. I mean, like that game with the Knicks last year, that was like, okay, East Coast team coming through. I'm not saying they were juggernauts, but both them and the Kings were like 3rd and 4th seed or something like that. And it was good to see. So, maybe that's the next step, right? If they continue to be good and they're looked at as a title contender, because a lot of the times, maybe they try to use those as potential finals previews. Maybe they don't see the Kings like that just yet. But if they could have a playoff run this upcoming season, maybe, you get more of those. So I hear you on that, Matt. I would have liked to see some East Coast teams as well.
But I'm excited about the schedule. It's pretty brutal. Like, it's a brutal schedule. The NBA strength of schedule metrics are not in the Kings' favor. They have the 3rd most difficult schedule in terms of strength of schedule metrics, which is a combination of like rest days, back-to-backs, quality of opponent. Travel is a big impact on that. And I don't know if you saw like the 7-game road trip that the Kings go on in Indiana, or rather in January, but they bounce around on that trip. They go like Miami to Indiana. It's crazy how much ground they are going to cover during that 7-game trip, which typically you'll see teams from the West Coast kind of start in the Northeast or Southeast and work their way up or work their way down. In this case, the Kings are bouncing around like a pinball a little bit. But then to have 10 of your first 15 games out of the gate on the road, Kings are going to be put to the test right away. I love the fact that the first 2 home games this season are Warriors followed up by Lakers, because that Kings-Warriors game, home opener, is essentially going to be game 8 of the playoffs in terms of atmosphere. So, let's get going. I mean, the Utah Jazz game, the Kings hopefully will win to warm themselves up, and you don't want to take any opponent lightly. But you talk about 2 major games right out of the gate with Kings and Lakers and Kings and Warriors. I'm very excited.
Yeah, how do you feel about that? They've essentially the NBA has essentially kind of run it back with the idea of we've got the Kings and the Warriors playing 3 times in the first like 4 or 5 weeks of the season again.
Yeah, I don't like that part. I wish it was spread out a little bit more. I do like it actually from the standpoint, and I said this at the beginning of last season, like the Warriors are incorporating Chris Paul. They're still a good team, but they're going to be figuring some things out. Plus the Warriors, the Suns, the Lakers, these are teams with aspirations to be playing in June. So they're taking each day and handling each day with the idea of they're going to be playing all the way into June. Of course, the Kings would like to handle themselves appropriately too, but they're not in a position where they can take nights off or ease into the season necessarily yet, because of especially how good of opponents they're taking on, and they don't want to find themselves in the middle of that play-in / fringe playoff pack in the West, which I think is still going to be a thing. So maybe there's a chance that the Kings can jump on the Warriors and jump on the Lakers a little bit early while they're incorporating themselves. That's one hand of things. The other hand is I really think the NBA is really trying to emphasize and establish this NorCal rivalry. I think they're really trying to go for it. They didn't do the Christmas Day game, which I thought would have been better than Warriors Nuggets, but I get why you have the defending champs on Christmas Day. But I mean, even rivalry week, which I think is the NBA put out rivalry week, the Kings play the Warriors on rivalry week. So I think the Kings, or rather the NBA, wants to really establish Kings Warriors NorCal rivalry and set that tone and reintroduce that tone right away with like a slugfest fight between these 2 teams right away.
Yeah, that's the Thursday TNT game.
Yeah.
The rivalry week. Yeah. Right after Atlanta.
Well, we don't like Atlanta.
Well, that's fine. And right before Dallas. And We know how you feel.
That's a rivalry right there. That's Kenny's rivalry week right there. Warriors and Mavs. Now we talking. Do you think, first of all, do you consider NBA TV a national TV game?
I don't, but it's fun to say 22 instead of 11.
Right. So are you we'll use the 22, right? Are you surprised with the number of national TV games? Was it about what you thought, more or less? What you thinking?
It was more with ESPN and TNT. It was more than I was expecting, but I put out there that I expected at least 5 because I thought every single Pacific Division game that the Kings had, like every single Pacific Division opponent was at least going to get 1. And I thought the Warriors would get 2 for obvious reasons. So I thought there was going to be 5 right there. And then the rest could be just trickled in and out. I was like 5, 6, 7 was my number that I was expecting. So to get 11 and to have some of them be like tournament games, like the San Antonio Spurs game, which I'm going to pretend that's more about the Kings and less about Victor Wembanyama, but I'm a realist in that sense. So I was a bit surprised by the number, but pleasantly surprised. And it's not like the Kings don't deserve it. They're one of the most exciting teams to watch. I do think there's going to be more games later on that are flexed in because, again, I expect the Kings to be one of the best, if not the best offense once again. Like the Kings are a fun basketball team to watch, whether you're rooting for them or not. And that's not just purple glasses. That's the reality of the situation. The brand of basketball that the Kings play is very much modern NBA basketball. It's very offensive driven. Hopefully the defensive is better, of course, but it's enticing to people. And I think the ratings of that opening series between the Kings and the Warriors perfectly reflect that. As much as Warrior honks over there want to claim it's because of the Warriors that the ratings were that high. No, it was because both teams were really competitive against one another. There was a lot of star power in that series, and the brand of basketball both of them play is second to none in the NBA. And the Kings are a major part of that. So I think the Kings will get even more national TV love before the season's over.
Anything else in the schedule really stand out to you?
I do like the fact that there are 2 6-game homestands, and they're 2 winnable 6-game homestands. And the Kings really, like, one of the big things this season is I think the Kings really are going to have to establish themselves as a dominant home court team. They were over 500 at home last season, but they were a better road team. They had more road wins than they had home wins. If the Kings really want to open that championship window for themselves, the Golden One Center for every team has to be a building where no matter who the Kings are playing, the Kings should be expected to win. Like that's the position you want to be in. So there are 2 road or homestands, 6-game homestands, one in December and one in, I think, March. And both of them are very winnable. So I just would like to see the Kings establish themselves at home and really take care of those homestands when they have them. And then also, like I mentioned earlier, like 10 of the first 15 games being on the road. Like you're being put to the test really, really quickly. And that's a position where if the Kings aren't careful, they can slip and fall and kind of find themselves in a position where they have to battle back a little bit. There's still plenty of time for them, of course, to do that, just 15 games into the season. But if we get through 15 games and the Kings are 3-4 games above 500, oh yeah, Sacramento's in a really good spot.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And to your point, I think they will establish that home court a little bit better this year. You know, I don't really know what happened last year where it didn't go that way, but I think they understand that. They understand they have to be better on the home court and at the Golden One Center. And, you know, not that this matters whether or not they're going to win games or not, but I think that's something that the NBA is banking on. You know, Damian talked about how 16 of the 22 games you said are at the Golden One Center. Mm-hmm. I mean, they want to see one of the best atmospheres in the NBA, and they want to put that on display. And it may sound silly, but they want to have a talking point about, oh, let's see the beam. They're about to light the beam. They want to have that talking point on these telecasts. So I think all those things combined, I expect a better record for the Kings this year at home.
Another thing, too, another note is, I know I mentioned like the back-to-backs and the strength of schedule already, but actually what works in the Kings' favor, it felt like last season the Kings were the team on the rest disadvantage a lot of the time. And a rest advantage is when you're entering a game, you didn't play the night before, and you're playing against a team on the second night of a back-to-back. Disadvantage is vice versa. This season, the Kings actually are second only to the Boston Celtics and tied with the Memphis Grizzlies for 15 rest advantage games, second most in the NBA. They're also tied for second fewest in the NBA of rest disadvantage games with 12. The fewest team is the Orlando Magic with 11. And for people who are upset still about the 15 back-to-backs and that being tied with 4 other teams is the most in the NBA, for context, the teams with the fewest have 13. So it's only 2 more back-to-backs than the teams with the fewest, and most teams have 14 back-to-backs, so only 1 more than most of the league. So in reality, it either cancels itself out, or to me, like, the back-to-back narrative isn't as big of a deal as maybe it's been in years past where the Kings have really gotten the short end of the stick.
Veering away from the schedule here for a few minutes, have you been following the Athletics player rankings? They're putting out their top 125 players in the NBA, and they're doing it in the most complicated way imaginable. That's virtually impossible to understand for every non-MIT grad who reads The Athletic. We could talk about De'Aaron and his placement. One thing that really stood out to me and Kenny is, man, the disrespect of Domantas Sabonis this offseason has really been extraordinary. And I'm not talking hot take, clickbait, most overrated player in the league type stuff. I'm talking about analytically breaking down, talking about him being, to use the Athletics words, a hard player to build around.
Yeah, I did not hear that or read that. That's absurd. I actually haven't followed that Athletic player breakdown, so bad for radio here, but I did.
No, it's not bad for radio. It's probably good that you didn't. It actually started a pretty intense conversation earlier.
Well, I did follow I think it was Hoops Hyper. Someone did like a top point guards in the league list, and De'Aaron, I think, was 8th, but 7th was Tyrese Halliburton, and I made my case for why De'Aaron should be top 5. But the idea, like the absurdity of the statement that Domantas Sabonis is difficult to build around is the biggest BS on the planet, because Domantas Sabonis is one of the easiest players for everybody to play through. And that's not just me saying that. Kevin Huerter has said that. Multiple Sacramento Kings teammates have said that. Domantas Sabonis is the foundation of the best offense in NBA history because he can do anything and everything in that offense. Do you want more 3-point shooting from him? Sure, we all do. Do you want more mid-range shooting from Sabonis, especially after that Warriors series? Absolutely, and you better be sure that he's been working on that all season long. And I can't wait. I cannot wait for the Warriors to try to give Domantas Sabonis that jump shot in game 1 inside the Golden One Center. Go ahead, because when Sabonis hits 5 of 7 of them, they're going to have to completely change their game plan. It's not going to work. Like, I more than trust Domantas Sabonis to figure that out. But the idea that Sabonis is impossible to build around, or one of the most difficult players in the league to build around, is stupid, because Sabonis, while he has the ball in his hands, he doesn't demand or need the ball in his hands to be effective. You can run multiple styles of offense through him. You can work him in the low post. You can work him in the high post, dribble handoffs on the perimeter. He's a rebounding machine. He's one of the best passing bigs, second only to the 2-time MVP and reigning champion in Nikola Jokic. Like, the idea that Sabonis is difficult to build around is ridiculous. How he can be so impactful and so important on the Sacramento Kings without being the best guy, the most important guy. And I'll raise this as the most important point. This is what Domantas Sabonis brings to your team. You can run for 35 minutes your offense completely through him. He can be the guy that is in charge. And then when it's De'Aaron Fox time in the fourth quarter, when you need a bucket, he's the guy going to De'Aaron and saying, where do you want me? What do you want me to do? How can I help you? Do you want me to set a pick? Do you need me to stand in the corner? What do you need me to do? That is the kind of teammate and the kind of person that Domantas Sabonis is. Domantas Sabonis will continue to fight through having his thumb broken and rest only 1 game and come back. And by the way, the game that he came back, the Kings defeated the defending champion Denver Nuggets in Sacramento. People forget about that part. And then after that, he got stomped in the chest by Draymond Green and played the rest of that series. And instead of being a distraction like the other guy is, he's the guy that came to the podium and said, I'm sorry, let's not talk about this because I want to talk about my coach winning Coach of the Year. I want to talk about my point guard winning Clutch Player of the Year. That's the kind of teammate that Domantas Sabonis is. That's the kind of player Domantas Sabonis is. And recency bias be damned, he might have struggled in that series. His numbers were still solid, not as good as they should be and can be and will be for the Kings. But Domantas Sabonis is one of the best centers in the NBA for a reason, and it's time for people to put that back on notice.
I agree 100%, Matt. I mean, well said for sure. The thing that I don't like, it's kind of nasty work, nasty behavior, is it seems as though people are making these lists and talking about Domantas Sabonis really based off these playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, Did he play great in the playoffs? Did he play well? No, I don't think so at all. I think he could have played a lot better, and he didn't look good on a couple of those nights. But number one, he still played well enough. I think they averaged like 16 and 9 for those playoffs. The assists were down, but then once again, like we always talk about the assists, the opportunities were there. He was still getting the same type of looks for these guys, for the Kevin Huerters, Keegan Murrays, guys like that. They just weren't falling. And that's not his fault. He's doing his job. He's doing what he's supposed to do. They're just not hitting shots. So I know I personally just get frustrated when they always talk about that first round series when trying to slight him without looking at the entire season and looking at some of these other guys who they big up and put above Sabonis and what they did or didn't do in the playoffs.
Well, I can tell you, Kenny, while they're doing that, because the Kings playoff series is the first time they watched Kings basketball this season, or this past season. Let's be real about it. I'm not pretending that the Sacramento Kings should have been on everybody's radar as much as they were on ours. And even though, how much of the story for the Kings last season was, hey, the beam, look at the beam, look what Sacramento's doing. It almost took away at times from what the Kings were doing on the floor. Now, some people, smart people, were paying attention and recognizing, wait a minute, this is the greatest offense we've ever seen. Wait a minute, they just smacked the Nets on national TV. Wait a minute, the Kings just beat the Knicks on national TV, and their head coach is pissed off because they were killed on the offensive glass. They still won that game. Smart people were paying attention. But the people that are putting these lists together, they're completely run by recency bias, and especially for a team that they only watched play 7 times last season. And quite frankly, they only watched those 7 games because of the Golden State Warriors and realized, oh, wait a minute, the Sacramento Kings are pretty good. Oh, wow, the Sacramento Kings won these first 2 games, which, by the way, at least in the first game, Domantas Sabonis played really, really well in that game. So it doesn't surprise me at all. And I don't know if it's something that motivates Sabonis. It's something certainly that I know would motivate De'Aaron Fox and even De'Aaron himself. De'Aaron was an all-star last season as a reserve. That's absurd based off of how good he was last season. And not to mention, nobody talks about De'Aaron Fox having one of the best playoff debuts in NBA history. When Ja Morant made his playoff debut and went off in that play-in game, everybody exalted Ja Morant as the next greatest point guard in the league. And I said for years, as soon as De'Aaron Fox got that stage, he was going to do the same damn thing. He did better than Ja Morant did. But because De'Aaron Fox got his thumb or his finger broken and he wasn't able to finish that series, mark my words, De'Aaron Fox doesn't get hurt. Kings win that series. So, this team still has a lot to prove. Granted, after a great year like that, you need to prove that you're not a fluke. So it doesn't surprise me necessarily. But this Kings team, I guarantee you, again, 15 games into the season, that narrative that this Kings team of last year was a fluke, that's going to be gone because the Kings were even better now than they were then.
Matt just dropped an 8-minute hit him up.
He really did. This was no Vaseline.
Yeah, he went pretty hard. Matt doesn't get either of those references, I don't think. But that's okay. That's all right.
Nope.
That's all right. You mentioned Ja Morant and De'Aaron Fox. I think one important thing, and you're 100% right about the reaction to Ja Morant's playoff debut, but the important part that Ja did is he followed up that playoff debut.
Mm-hmm.
He's never, and we can talk about all the other stuff on the floor. He's never looked back. He's been that guy we saw in the playoffs ever since. And I think that's what every Kings fan wants to see from De'Aaron Fox, who, by the way, Matt, just to kind of close this out, finished in the top 25 of this athletic list, and he's in a tier with guys like Bam Adebayo, Jaylen Brown, Donovan Mitchell, Anthony Edwards, and Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yeah, that's a position that he deserves to be in. He deserves to be even higher than that. And I think the next step.
Ja Morant was 13th, just for the.
Doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me, but it is what it is. I would
put a couple of years together.
Mm-hmm.
I would put De'Aaron Fox above Ja Morant. And that's not a hard decision for me to make, but it is what it is. And I also know that De'Aaron Fox is probably going to play the majority of games for my team and not do anything silly. So that aspect weighs into things too. But I have no doubts that De'Aaron is going to follow things up. And one of the major reasons for that, D-Lo, is because of the guy that's coaching him. Mike Brown has a standard. And it's been very well documented, shared to us by Kings players. Plus, we can see it in the limited practice windows that we get. Mike holds Fox and Sabonis more accountable than anybody else on that team. So nobody else has any excuse. But that's what De'Aaron said he wants. He wants to be coached that way. He wants to be held accountable. And Mike has been asking for more of a complete defensive effort for Fox, which we know he's capable of because he became a really good defender on ball in the fourth quarter, especially last season. He's one of the major reasons why when it came to just fourth quarter defense, the Kings were one of the best in the league. Now, of course, you add the first 3 quarters in, not so great. So that's something that the team as a whole needs to overcome, not just Fox. But for me, the De'Aaron Fox next step is fourth quarter Fox goes off, but he already has 20 points coming into the fourth quarter. Like if he can do that semi-consistently, at that point, we're starting to talk about him the same way we're talking about Damian Lillard, which is, wow, Dame's on a bad team, but we have to put him in the All-Star game because he's Dame. Like that's the way we're going to be talking about De'Aaron Fox, except not the bad team part. It's going to be, we can't leave De'Aaron Fox out of it because he's De'Aaron Fox. That's going to be the conversation once we come All-Star game time. And I don't know, now that Fox has had 1 All-Star game under his belt, how much he cares about that. Like maybe he has in the past, but the recognition should be there regardless of if Fox wants it or not.
Well, De'Aaron's going to play. Like whatever De'Aaron wants is irrelevant, or what the rephrase that. Whatever De'Aaron cares about doesn't matter.
Right.
Like if he's an all-star, he's going to be an all-star.
As simple as that.
You think there can be, and this is going to kill you because we only have like 45 seconds left. We were having a conversation about, someone asked us about Keegan Murray ascending, and we all believe Keegan Murray can ascend. This term has been used so often, but can you see a big 3 in De'Aaron, Domas, and Keegan? Can Keegan get to that level?
Yes. This season, maybe too early. I'll say this. If the Kings have 3 All-Stars this season and Keegan's one of them, this Kings team is competing for a championship. If they're good, they're championship contenders. 100%.
Make sure you check out all of Matt's wonderful work over at ABC 10. And, of course, the Locked On Kings podcast.